I wish each of you could sit in this chair and look out into this beautiful collection of human beings. I want to try a little experiment with you by way of further inviting you to join Richard Lang here next week. If you're looking toward this person, please become aware that you're seeing. And notice, well, let's do this. This is one of the early experiments he'll do. Take your finger and point at something on the other side of the room. And maybe say its name, like I'm going to say window, and then fan, and then another couple of things. Actually point. It's very useful to point. And then to point closer, maybe the floor, and then knee, and then chest, and then point here where other people would see your eyes. What is your actual experience of that which the finger points at? It's a little easier without glasses. Glasses tend to create an object. At what are you pointing when you point? And generally we would say, well, I'm pointing at my face. But do you experience face, or do you actually experience a knowing, a capacity of awareness? Because that's what's there. Similarly, if you look at this face, if you pay attention to this, do you have a face in this interaction? I don't have a face talking to you. I have you. I have this room. I have the world. And what's at this end experientially is actually just that which knows. And the Buddha consciousness, the Buddha nature is that close. Most of us practice with the notion that maybe someday if I'm good enough and I meditate hard and maybe I have to go to Burma and practice as a monk or a nun or something, maybe then I'll have the experience of being present or awake. It's just it's a very narrow mindset we get caught in, that which is awake is here now. The awareness of the universe is brilliantly shining in you, in us, right now. And we've been very strongly trained that we have a self, that we have a separate something here. And it's possible in a heartbeat to realize, oh, actually, what I am is this that knows. And Richard is a marvelous teacher of this. The workshop on next Saturday is 9 to 9. And you don't have to come from the whole thing, but you can't come for part. So from 9 in the morning, there's two potlucks, one at lunch and one at dinner. So there's the day-long experiments that he'll be doing. And then the evening is a 5 rhythms dance. And it's a very mindful dancing process. So I really encourage you. He's flying to from England to be with us. He's going on from here to be in Hawaii. He teaches literally all over the world. And he's a really fascinating, funny guy. And I think you'll find it very interesting to come. I don't know if Avi spoke about Dana, supporting the community financially. It's a very important thing to be helping with. But there's another way we just realized that in our Teachers' Council on Sunday or Friday night, which is you can support PIMC by writing a review on Google, on Yelp, or on, where's the other one? Facebook, yeah. If you're having a good time and would like to comment on it, that people read those things. I don't myself, but people really do. My wife is so into reading reviews. She reads reviews on recipes. It's like It's interesting.
Robert, you might want to let people know that all of our reviews are authentic. We don't pay for fake reviews.
We don't. Ça va sans dire, n'est-ce pas? Goes without saying. Yeah. Okay. So, how's the time? Oh, okay, good. I have not practiced what I preach. I have in some ways, but there's a way that I've been really negligent, and that is of taking time to go on a retreat myself. And finally, with significant help from Jennifer and Avi and Connie. I was talking about a particular week in January that I would go and be at the beach, and Jennifer locked it in. She said, "You're going." I think I would have, but I have this ridiculous, really, sense of overly responsible, because I had to cancel some things and disappoint some people. But what happened was an extraordinary, beautiful experience of remarkable ease. And it wasn't all pleasant, because some stuff came through that was not pleasant. But I got to sit for as long as I wanted, and I got to walk for as long as I wanted. I only went down to the beach twice. It was very rainy. And I had guitar playing time, and I did a little reading. I read The End of Your World, Adyashanti's book again. It was very helpful for my time. But a lot of realizations happened. There were at least 15 issues, management sort of issues here at PIMC, that I had on my to-do list that I was toiling over. All but one of them were non-questions as soon as I got quiet. It was obvious what to do. So I was creating complexity in the problem-solving mind. But I'm going to share a quote with you here. It really illuminated for me, thank you for saving that, the fact that I'm going to do this again, at least a couple of more times this year. It's really a responsibility to do so. But I'm going to share this quote that I came across this quote actually on the bulletin board at Cloud Mountain Retreat Center 20-some years ago. And I read it and I looked away. Because I knew, in retrospect, I knew that if I really took it to heart, I would have to change my life. You know how such things are. And then, it's funny, I feel just a little background of teariness as about a year ago, I remembered it. It was like, oh, what? That was that quote. It took me 30 seconds with the memory of Thomas Merton and then a bit of the quote, and this is what popped up. If it'll do it. Nothing. It was, there it is. There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs. Activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone and everything is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom which makes work fruitful. There are in this room, I know, people who have been hurt by my saying, I'll get back to you, and then not. Because of overcommitment. Or because the first sign, I learned this years ago, it's quite remarkable. The first sign of burnout, euphoria. Yes, I am on it. I am hot. Oh, look at what I'm doing. I worked 10 hours today. This is really cool. What productivity. And that's very valued by our culture, right? We're supposed to be superhuman. We're supposed to be on. We're supposed to respond to every cause. We're supposed to be something other than what we are, which is somewhat frail. I'm going to ask Avi, I already did actually, to send this out on the listserv today. This and a couple of other things. So, move this up. Come on. Do your thing. I think I want to do this next. Could we have these front lights turned off, please? One of my great heroes in this life is a woman named Joanna Macy. She taught here a few weeks ago, a few months ago now. Time flies fast. Where are you, Joanna? Here she is, or here she will be. And I want to play this in this context and see what you think.
Welcome to the first episode of the Active Hope Show. I'm Chris Johnston, and with my co-author Joanna Macy, we wrote Active Hope to draw together insights and practices that help us give our best response to the crisis of sustainability unfolding in our world. One of the core insights is that our ability to respond is shaped by the stories woven into our view of reality. If we want to be empowered and inspired, we need stories that are empowering and inspiring. So here Joanna tells one that we both draw strength from.
I'd like to tell you a prophecy from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. It's called The Coming of the Kingdom of Shambhala, and it is 12 centuries old. This is a particular version of the prophecy embedded in the Kalachakra Tantra. And it was given to me by my dear friend, Dharma brother, Dugu Chogyal Rinpoche of the community of Tashijong in India. When I heard it, I realized that the term Shambhala warrior is a metaphor for what in Buddhism is understood to be the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva is the hero in the Buddhist tradition. And because the core teaching of the Lord Buddha is the radical inter-existence of all things, if one person has the capacity to be a bodhisattva, then others do too. So let me tell you this prophecy. I'm going to aim it at the bodhisattva inside you. Listen to it as if it were about you, as if you realized it were about you. And I'm giving it to you pretty much in the language I received it from Dugu Chogyal Rinpoche. There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger. At that time, great powers have arisen, barbarian powers. And although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common. And among the things these powers, these barbarian powers, have in common are weapons of unfathomable devastation and death, and technologies that lay waste to the world. And it is just at this point in our history when the future of all beings seems to hang by the frailest of threads that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges. Now you can't go there because it is not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala warriors. And actually, you can't tell a Shambhala warrior by looking at her or him, because they wear no uniforms, no insignia, they wield no banners, they have no barricades upon which to climb to threaten the enemy or behind which they can rest and regroup. They don't even have any home turf. The Shambhala warriors have only the terrain of the barbarian powers to move across, to act upon. Now the time is coming, Dugu Gyal Rinpoche said to me, when great courage is required of the Shambhala warriors. Moral courage and physical courage. And that's because they are going to go right into the heart of the barbarian powers to dismantle their weapons. They're going to go into the pits and citadels where the weapons are made and deployed. They're going to go into the corridors of power where the decisions are made to dismantle the weapons in every sense of the word. Now mark this, said Chugyal Rinpoche to me. The Shambhala warriors know that these weapons can be dismantled because they are manomaya. That means mind-made. Made by the human mind, they can be unmade by the human mind. Because the dangers that face us are not brought upon us by some satanic deity or some evil extraterrestrial force or some unchangeable preordained fate. They arise out of our relationships and habits, out of our priorities. They are made by the human mind. They can be unmade by the human mind. So, he said, now is the time the Shambhala warriors go into training. How do they train? I asked. They train in the use of 2 implements, he said. Actually used the word weapons. What are they? I asked. And he held up his hands the way the dancers hold the ritual objects in the great Lama dances of his people. And he said, one is compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena. And you need both, he said. You need the compassion because that provides the fuel to move you out where you need to be, to do what you need to do. It means not being afraid of the suffering of your world. And when you're not afraid to be with that pain, then nothing can stop you. You can be and do what you're meant to. But by itself, he said, that implement is very hot. It can burn you out. So you need the other. That other tool the insight into the radical interconnectivity at the heart of existence, the web of life, our deep ecology. When you have that, you know, he said, when you understand that, then you know that this is not a battle between good guys and bad guys. You know that the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. And you know that we are so interwoven in the web of life that even the smallest act with clear intention has repercussions through the whole web, beyond your capacity to see. But that's kind of cool, he said. It's maybe even a little abstract, so you need the heat of the compassion. That's the prophecy. And if you've seen Tibetan monks doing chanting with the hands, gestures, the mudras, moving, likely as not, they are dancing the interplay between compassion and wisdom, which is there for each one of us to embody now in our own way.
Could we have the lights back on, please? Maybe close the windows. Nice, thanks. Thank you, Joanna. Mark, would you push the power button twice, please? Thanks. Okay. I want to share with you something now that's personal, and by that I'm meaning it may not fit for you. It may not be what you discover your truth to be. I'm not as, I don't speak of this with the same certainty in a way that I speak of the Eightfold Path or the Seven Enlightenment Factors, or because this is more of a discovery that I've made myself. By having a news fast, I discovered something about the news for me that is rather, for me, it was rather shocking. Somehow I just hadn't quite seen it before. And what I discovered is that when I connect in with the news, it creates a story. It's a soap opera. And it creates a story out of which I create a reality. And then I believe that there are people somewhere who actually are doing that, and that I have to have an opinion about. I have reaction about. And I discovered that it's a way that this separate self constructs itself. And one of the particular patterns is something called enemy images. It creates enemy images. There are the bad people whose values don't match mine, and there are the good people whose values do match mine. And a long time ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 45 years ago, I spent a year, 1 week, one Wednesday night or Tuesday night a week, with a fellow called Marshall McLuhan, who was the wise media person. He's the fellow who said the medium is the message. And he pointed out that the media, American, Western media, what we think of as the news media, their purpose is not to provide news. Their purpose is to sell products. And in order to sell products, the way he did it, he had a copy. You remember the New York Times used to be 2 inches thick. And he had that, and he said, there's the news is the bad news. And most of what's presented is bad and oppositional, creates enemies. The good news is the advertising. Because life is dangerous and bad, but you can be happy if you just buy more stuff. And so it used to be this thick, the advertising, the color ads on Sundays and so on. And I recognized that's what I see happening in our media as well. Our friend, some of you were here, Frank later taught, he's from Germany. In Germany, they have 3 TV stations that are funded directly from the people. The money doesn't even go to the government. It's 3 stations whose purpose is the facts. When a speech is given, there's fact-checking from 3 different sources, no politics, and no advertising. There's 8 radio stations that are the same. But all of that being that, I realized that deep down inside, I get kind of agitated by that story. And when I was without that story, I had such joy and spaciousness and loving that the contrast was pretty shocking for me. And my meditation just went deeper and deeper and deeper. And I would sit, I don't know, and it wasn't even timing, it might be 2 hours, I don't know, long periods of time. I'd just sit and watch life happen. It's a piece I'm missing just now. Oh yeah, well, do it this way. The Bodhisattva. How shall I live my life? How shall I respond to these challenging times? Another story that Joanna tells is that we are each a node in Indra's web. It's a Hindu image. That there is this infinite, vast universe, and then there are these little nodes of consciousness that take birth. And in this room, there's 110 or so, and out there on the internet, hello again. And for a little time, there's this energy coalesces as matter, and then there's a little piece of conscious matter. And we're each absolutely intimately connected in that web, which means that every single action that we do affects the web. Not the internet, but the web of life. So that what happens in this body in terms of its viscera, in terms of its thoughts, in terms of its intentions, in terms of its emotions, in terms of its self-hatred or self-love or loving of others and so on, it's affecting everything. And I've said for years, and I've believed it for years, but I got it at a deeper level, the single most important thing, I believe, that each of us does is to take responsibility for our own inner life. To have half an hour or an hour a day in which we really do attend and notice, oh, there's self-hatred. Well, hatred is hatred. So why not open to love? Any parts of ourselves that we have rejection of, we're rejecting the world. And most of us have a lot of that. Some of us also, we all have some degree of trauma. You don't get out of childhood being born, but you don't get out of childhood without some degree of interpersonal trauma. To take responsibility for that so that the wake we leave behind us isn't always colored by that particular trauma. I just remembered a friend of mine who spent a few weeks on a Greenpeace boat years ago, Greenpeace, one of the ships, and he said he'd never been around a group of such angry, hating people in his life. Because they were out there going to stick it to those Japanese. And he got off as quickly as he could, because that was not what he had anticipated. But the motivation was that. So we can have that inside ourselves, or we can, and toward ourselves. So, this is a question that's come up very often in our community and with individuals coming with the shifting that's happened in our own politics here in the last year. What can I do? And a lot of us have gone into, I'm hopeless, I'm despairing, I don't know what to do. And one possible reason for that is we've taken on a bigger bite than we can possibly digest. So what Joanna suggests, this comes up in her teachings in a variety of ways, is we're part of the web, and we are responsible for the part of the web that we can reach. And if something happens right here in the web, I need to take care of it. If something's happening in my family in the web, then I'm responsible for that. If something's happening in whatever Stephen Covey called it, my zone of influence, that's where I need to focus, because that's where I have an impact. When Bangladesh is 1/3 underwater, or when the floods, when Afghanistan is being blasted again, these places that I've been, when the news hits me of them, it always affects me. Though our news doesn't talk about them much because they don't matter. But what can I do about flooding in Bangladesh? What can I do about pretty primitive little boys in Washington, D.C., treating each other really badly and fighting over their ideology? There's not much that I discover that I can do. It's beyond my realm of influence. And what I've discovered is if I stay tied up in that, the very realm in which I have influence suffers, because I'm preoccupied with a planetary problem that's not really mine. It affects me, but I become incapable of acting skillfully because I'm upset about something that's beyond my capacity. Now, if we come back to Joanna, there's the one hand which is compassion, and then the hand of radical interdependence of all things. That everything's interrelated. And some of it I can influence directly, and some of it I can influence most effectively through the quality of peace in my own heart. I've talked to a lot of people in this community in this last year who are really overwhelmed and not doing so well. Actually, a lot of depression and anxiety, and one thing, an observation that I make is that how we respond to these big events is exactly in keeping with the trauma that we experienced in our childhood. For those people who had a difficult, intrusive, narcissistic father, this is a hard time paying attention to politics. When people whose lives were kind of out of control and alcoholic parentage and so on, to pay attention to all that, it always is setting off this early childhood stuff. So coming back to myself, what's my responsibility? My first responsibility is to take care of this person. And he needs more retreat time, for one thing. But he also needs to not stay tuned in to that which is constantly setting off the trauma that is not helpful. Which doesn't mean don't know anything about it. But there's a way that I've used this to stay agitated and to stay distracted. And it was actually interesting, and I've done retreats years ago I've done retreats, but the toilet without the phone is a different experience. One can, and the, oh, I have to go to the bathroom, and where's my phone? So I go to the phone and I tune in on the soap opera of my choice, which is through a particular, quote, news outlet. And then what happens is, well, I'm distracted. I'm not here in the body. I'm not with the reality of life. But I'm also getting caught up on my soap opera. And the soap opera is unsettling. Something happened in Europe and Asia about 2,500 years ago with the Buddha and Mahavir and various other teachings, and with Jesus in the West. And years ago I read a really interesting book called The Rise of the West, and one of the main themes is the land bridge. The communication between Asia and Europe has always been, it's been very big. Like Jesus didn't have to go to Asia to run into Buddhist ideas. There were Buddhist monks in the Middle East at the time of Jesus. There's a whole, one of my favorite books of Buddhist teachings is The Questions of King Menander of Greece, whose base was in Bactria or Balkh, the walls of which I walked on in northern Afghanistan. So the Greeks were ruling in, after Alexander the Psychopath went through, the Greeks were there. And I say that because if you read about who he was and what he did, he makes modern horror stories of war look timid. He was not a great person, he was a conqueror. But so the Greeks were there, and this Greek king had a conversation with a Buddhist monk. So the ideas of Buddha were flowing back and forth. But anyway, this notion came of turning the other cheek. Not an eye for an eye, which is our mammalian history, but turning the other cheek. At the same time as the Buddha and the Bodhisattva notion came up, that really, if we're going to become more fully who we are as humans, compassion is the answer. Compassion and learning how to learn, of course, to defend oneself, but to not always be out to get revenge. And revenge runs pretty deep in us. That's why in the Brahma Viharas there's love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Sympathetic joy is the answer to jealousy. Right? Oh, you're having success? Well, I'll delight in it. I'll get a contact high off your success. And hatred so easily turns to the desire for revenge. Gandhi said, with an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So, one of the things that I've observed, it's not my personal observation, but it became more clear and clear, that our media are based on enemy images. There's the bad people. On one side says, those are the bad people because their values are bad and they're doing this. And then the other side says, these are the bad people and they're doing this. And to take either of those as my truth locks me into enemy images. And it takes me out of realizing these are just people. And in terms of the interdependence of all things, they are not just people, they are me. Everyone on every side is me. And to harbor I hate them or they're bad and wrong is to create an isolated, frightened self in me, of me. And I'm really tired of that. And sadness. Oof. I've been a little frustrated with myself and our community. Well, why aren't we doing more activism? Well, it's really hard to do activism that isn't the same problem. it's hard to be. It's even the you should be an activist. There's a violence in that. So how does one, as a person who has some understanding of compassion and the interrelationship of all things, how does one enter the world of action with love? And again, I come back, I have this I think a little Johnny one note, little Johnny one note, didn't sing but one note, sang it all day long. I think that developing our own inner practice and finding how we can stay peaceful is as important or more important than anything we can do. Because then we leave behind us, you know how it is, you have an encounter with people all day long and they leave an impact on you just as you're leaving an impact on them. We leave a wake, we're like a boat. And if our wake is loving and kind and joyful, that's what we're contributing to the web. If it's angry and irritable or righteous, that's the wake we're leaving. There's a quote I have here from Father Dorotheus of the Desert Fathers, 11th century maybe, no, earlier, more like the 3rd century or 4th. Over whatever you have to do, even if it be very urgent and demands great care, I would not have you argue or be agitated, for rest assured, everything you do, be it great or small, is but 1/8 of the problem, whereas to keep one's state undisturbed, even if thereby one should fail to accomplish the task, is the other 7/8. So if you are busy at some task and wish to do so perfectly, try to accomplish it, which constitutes 1/8. If, however, in order to accomplish your task, you would inevitably carried away and harm yourself or another by arguing with them, you should not lose 7 for the sake of preserving 1/8. The medium is the message. Peace is the way. There's no way to peace. Peace is the way. I think that may be it. From the Great Way, to set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. Okay, one more thing. Yay. What also became clear to me on my retreat was Ram Dass got it completely right with his first book. The entirety of the spiritual path is be here now. The sophisticated teachings of Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and the 12 Steps of Dependent Origination and the precepts and et cetera, that incredible, there are so many beautiful tools. They're all there for one purpose. They help us be here now. They help us understand that the action of this moment conditions the next moment, and therefore this moment is of super importance. So to be here now requires me to not be lost in the trances of enemy imaging, to not be lost in the fantasies that are created of the world. I have enough fantasies of my own, coming out of my own childhood. So perhaps that's it. Maybe you have a moment for a comment or an addition or a question before the kids come upon us. Please, come. Test, test. 1, 2. There we go. Come get. Please say name too.
Hi, excuse me, I'm Mickey. I wrestle with this question that you've talked about because I can see the sort of never-ending conflict, and I don't think half our country hating the other half is a great way to be in community. But on the other hand, I'm transgender, and one of the first things this administration did was say that they were no longer going to protect the rights of transgender students. A few months after that, there was the tweet about the military ban. They've just started a division in their civil rights office to defend medical professionals who don't want to treat transgender people, or employers who want to fire LGBTQ people. And so it's hard to see it as just a soap opera when that's going on, and I think immigrant communities probably feel the same way. And I don't know exactly how to reconcile that. I can't not look every day because I don't know what's going to happen. So I guess that's my comment.
What a powerful comment. So one place that the web reaches you is that. And my guess is you will be very attentive to, and because you're here and because I know you a little bit, and lovingly effective in your opposition to that madness. And in that loving response, you will be really powerful. Because I don't think that this working to see it this way and taking care of ourselves precludes action at all. But it's action where we have the pull and where the web is pulling us. And how important that you will focus on that piece of the web, because someone else will be focusing somewhere else, where there are, in my view, ignorant, misguided, frightened human beings implementing policies which are really not okay. Yeah. Please, back there.
Hi, my name is Natalie, and I very much agree with not seeing others as the enemy, not the us-them attitude, although I fall into that just about every day that I hear Ryan Zinke's name. But I think of...
Could you hold the mic a little closer?
I think of Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Call Me By My True Name.
Yes.
Where, we are everyone. And I have a little bit of trouble about the definition of defining one's sphere of influence, because I think if we really feel and know that interconnection, then we are the Rohingya and we are the migrants crossing the Mediterranean. And I know that there are folks who are doing that work not out of hatred or anger, but truly doing the Buddhist work. And I guess, I certainly don't have all the answers, and I struggle with this every day, but I feel like we have an obligation to know that our sphere of influence is really everything, because we are so connected. And for me, that makes it more complicated and more painful, but I can't get away from that.
Yeah, it's a very challenging dilemma. Depending upon what news sources I plug into. For a time, I was plugging into Al Jazeera and the German media, English media, and the British media, and they cover completely different things. And around the world, there are so many tragedies happening. It's just endless. It's endless. And so I get really overwhelmed, but I don't disagree at all with you that those, the Rohingya have a special resonance for me, because that Burmese monk that might as well be Hermann Goering, who is preaching from a Dharma seat today that it's a good thing to kill Muslims, that has a certain resonance with me too. It's like, and there's no structure in Burmese Buddhism to stop him. And yet, to know about that is important for me, And I can't hang out there a lot because I can't influence it. But I know it's there, that one in particular. I think we need to get the kids in. So thank you for that comment, though. Very much useful. So please come and make a big circle and come and have some potluck. Oh, I forgot a piece. Is the microphone... here it is. Here is the microphone. Hey, Papa. Hi. Hi, Tara. Nice to see you. Is he squeezing you too hard? A little bit, I think. You're making a squeaky toy sound. You're not? Okay. All right. Where's my mom? Oh, no. So, please find a hand to hold if you want. May I hold your hand, sweetie? Nope. An elbow? A bump elbow? All right, that's enough. So, may I hold your hand? Oops. The right spot is important. So we human beings, as each of us being a node in this web, we have such potency with our intentions and our thoughts and our well-wishing. So why not give the hand on the person on your right a little squeeze and think a kind thought for them. And then the person on your left giving that hand a squeeze. Notice someone is wishing you well. For some of us, that's really challenging. And then what about the person between these hands, between your two hands? Perhaps use the great ancient mantra, I love you, with your name at the end. And now extending this blessing to everyone in this room. To little babies and children of all ages, adults, elders, and allowing this wish to extend to the houses around us, to the whole city, to the world. To the world where 150,000 people will die today. 190,000 will be born. And all of our brothers and sisters of the air, the earth, and the waters, our kin, all my relations, ho mitakuyasan. So we are each a little node of consciousness in this vast web. And now we have the ancient ritual of may all beings be happy 3 times. Who is doing it? Maya. Oh, the 2 of you? These 2? Oh, come on over here, sweetie. Oh, here. All right, you ready? You want to hold it? You can both hold it. There you go. When you're ready, it's may all beings be happy, okay?
May all beings be happy.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. Very nice. Good. So now, everyone in the room gets to make a wish. Think of a wish. What would your deepest wish be? Since your consciousness is connected to the entire shebang, what would you like to add to that shebang today? And now take a deep breath, and on the proper count, there will be a blowing out of the candle. We'll all make a wish. You ready? 1, 2, 3, blow. Yes, we did it. So, thanks, dear friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you, those of you joining us on the internet. And please come and have a cup of tea and some goodies.